Well, hey everybody, welcome to the show. Here we go. This is episode two of the Terribly Vexed We're off to a great start.
Have you started recording?
Yeah.
Good.
Let me try that again. Hello, this is episode 2 of the Terribly Vexed Podcast with me, Justin Perlioni, and
Josh Branson.
Yep.
We're back again.
Once again, we are here, and we're going to talk about.
Sorry, am I yelling?
No. I'm just adjusting. You know, we're both just chit chatting. I just, you got to adjust the levels. Sorry, don't take any offense to it. So we're going to talk about the Dennis Martin disappearance this time, right?
Yes, we are.
Yes,
The big one.
the biggest in the Smoky Mountains, or is it the biggest anywhere?
Well, it changed search and rescue throughout all of the national parks. So it's kind of a big deal, the Dennis Martin disappearance. It's a big case.
I think in the last episode you said there were 1,200 people that just went up there.
1,400.
1,400
Over the course of, the 3 weeks that the main search was taking place. So,
So they kind of destroyed
yeah, any sort
any
of
evidence.
When trackers go out, they're looking for sign.
Right.
And sign could be a broken branch. It could be a footprint, any number of things.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, you have, 300 people a day traipsing around all over the place. It's going to just destroy any possible
It's no good.
clue that they could locate.
Well,
But, yeah.
see, when you said that, I was thinking, like, when you said there were too many people up there, I literally was thinking, like, 50 to 100.
Right. That's, which is what it would... I don't know if that's what it would be now, but it's definitely much more specialized groups of guys that are highly trained.
Right.
And girls.
Oh, yeah, you're right. So where did this take place?
It took place at Spence Field in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And if you'd like, Justin, I could give you a little brief historical reference to Spence Field.
I would love it.
As well as geographical to kind of explain where this is located in the park.
Please do.
If you'd like that. I'm going to consult my notes here on this. Made some quality notes for this podcast.
I see that.
We prepared thoroughly.
Yeah, way more prepared than I am.
Yeah.
But when it comes to UFOs, you better believe I'm going to blow your mind like you're about to blow my mind.
When you're really going to take off.
Yes.
And take flight.
We're in your world right now. So.
All right. So,
enlighten me.
All right, let me see what we've got here. So let's, I guess Spence Field is essentially named after James Spence. He was a settler who built a cabin up on the field in around about 1830. Spence and his wife, Carolyn Law, they were connected with the Cades Cove area. So Cades Cove is the area just below Spence Field. Spence Field is the mountain that rises to about 5,000 feet above Cades Cove. And, of course, most people that come to the Smokies will go to Cades Cove. They know exactly what that is. They'll drive the loop and check out the houses, the old cabins and stuff.
And can I just interject some knowledge that I have? Cades Cove has an 11-mile loop.
That's true.
That's all I got. Go ahead.
You can ride that loop on your bike if you want to on Wednesdays and Sundays, I believe. They'll close it off to cars.
I did that once when I was a kid. My dad yelled at me for going too fast.
Did you have a helmet on?
I don't know. I don't remember.
He was just trying to make sure that you were going to be okay and not, get hurt.
I'm sure he had a good reason to scream at me in front of other people, but, I digress. Go ahead.
We both are digressing. So James and his wife, Carolyn, They herded livestock at Spence Field during the warmer months, and according to the notes, they would only rarely visit the lower elevations, which was kind of common with the Balds, like Gregory Bald. Russell Field was possibly another one, but the Balds are sort of an anomaly in the parks. Some of them are natural. The one at Spence, I don't believe is supposed to be natural. I think it was supposed to have been made by him to graze his cattle.
For the cattle.
For the cattle.
Yeah. Some of them are natural.
Some of them are natural.
I did not know that.
Supposedly.
I always assumed they were just, you told me
man-made.
cattle. Yeah.
Yeah, I think some of them are supposed to be natural. I could be wrong.
I like that. Because I do like a nice bald. They're cool. When you're up on them, they're cool.
Yeah, so like I said, most of the time they would not come down from their mountain up there. And again, this was in about the mid-1800s. It's talking about one story here. A few days before the birth of their son Robert in 1840, Carolyn Spence walked alone 10 miles to their home in the White Oak Cove in order to be near neighbors who could assist her with her birth. So that's about the only time they would come down, is when they really needed to.
Yeah.
Any sort of emergencies. And in the summer months, that's when they would take the livestock up there, because the lower elevations were going to be used for growing crops, like in your Cades Cove area and stuff.
Right.
And I'm not sure where the White Oak Cove area is. I don't know where that is. There's lots of coves, lots of hollers.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of going back to the notes here a second. John Oliver was one of the first settlers in Cades Cove, and he claimed that Spence burned trees and cleared Spence Field in the 1830s.
Is he related to the HBO show host?
Probably.
Yeah, I would assume so. Go ahead.
So anyway, yeah, the summertime pastures used in the 1900s. Thousands of cows, horses, sheep, and goats would graze in the bottomlands, and then they would move them up to the top, when they would start growing crops or whatever. So
it was mainly sheep. Is that what was going on there?
a combination.
Okay.
If you actually go up to Roan Mountain, they still put sheep up there today to keep those balds clear, when I've seen them and taken pictures of them. So Roan Mountain in Johnson City.
What's the LeConte?
Right.
What do they use on the trails up there? You've taken pictures of them too.
What do you mean?
That pack animal that they use?
Llamas.
Llamas.
The llama train. Yeah, the llama train that supplies the lodge on Mount LeConte during its operation. They go up 3 days a week and take the llamas up.
Really?
Yeah. They used to use horses back in the early days of
Why do
the
they
park.
use llamas now? Just because it's cooler?
Less invasive, less destructive is a better
I
word.
gotcha.
Less destructive on the trails. Their feet are very soft.
They're made to be doing that kind of, okay.
Yeah, they have good endurance. And I think the guy that I came down with that time, the llama wrangler, I think he said they can carry about 100 pounds per llama. And most times I think they probably don't push that, but they'll bring down garbage, trash, take up laundry, relatively light things.
It's one of those hikes I've always wanted to do, but
Well, there's 5 ways up to LeConte, so you let me know when you want to go.
is one of them an escalator?
Yes, there is an escalator.
I am down
to the lodge.
No, it just seems like what you were telling me, that the guy that just stays up there in winter, the
winter caretaker.
Yeah, that seems like a
dream job.
Yep.
Probably is, except for the pay.
Yeah, but what do you need it for? If you're,
Depends.
You don't need. How long is he up there for? And this is another.
Well, the lodge just closed now, so basically November until when it opens in March, end of March.
He's up there the whole time.
Not really. He comes down. We'll probably go to like Gatlinburg to do some shopping, get groceries and things that he, can't keep up there because I don't think they have any sort of refrigerative abilities. So you're talking dried foods and things like that.
Yeah.
And people also hike up in the winter, like myself, and will take things to them. little treats like chocolate bars and coffee and so
He's
good.
like a hobbit.
It's like a hobbit.
Yeah.
Just real quick, going back to the notes.
I'm sorry. I digressed yet again.
One of the peaks in the Smoky Mountains, it's okay, we can digress, is named after Arnold Guyot. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It's a peak that is located in a very remote section, sort of the northeasterly end of the park. He surveyed a lot of the Smokies in the 1850s. He measured the elevation at Spence Field at around 4,900 feet. So it's cruising around 5,000 feet, in case you were curious, to kind of get the geographical sense of where you're at. Author Horace Kephart also frequented Spence Field, and there used to be a herder shack up there. And Horace Kephart was a beloved author that lived just in Bryson City over there on the other side. He has a very interesting life. Read up on Horace Kephart if you get a chance. Had a good way with words, this man.
How you spell that last name?
Kephart?
Yeah.
Kephart.
Okay.
Horace Kephart.
There we go.
A lot of good writing by this man, Mr. Kephart. So, and sort of like Spence Field, just to give you some more geographical location, there's a couple of ways you can hike up that are, I guess, the shortest routes. If you're coming from the lowlands, you can go up the, as you're going into Cades Cove, you can go into the picnic area and take the Anthony Creek Trail, which will take you up to the, I think it's it's the Boat Mountain Trail, which was actually a Jeep trail that they used during the search for Dennis Martin quite often. It's essentially a road or a Jeep trail. I don't think it's used anymore.
Not anymore.
But it's very wide. You can tell that it's not just your typical footpath trail. It's very wide. And you can pick that up also from the road coming into Cades Cove. So there's essentially two ways. One's ever so slightly shorter than the other. And with the Anthony Creek Trail, you can actually go up to Russell Field, kind of makes a loop, which is where they spent the night first when they went up, the Martin family. Back in 1969, they stayed at Russell Field, which is lower in elevation by maybe 1,000 or 2 feet. And that's where they stayed before they went up to Spence Field.
This was a Father's Day tradition, right?
Correct.
So, yeah.
Very good. Somebody's been looking at their notes.
Thank you.
Good job. It's one thing I don't have to mention now.
Yeah. See, I'm here for you.
Yeah, and this was going to be Dennis's first time joining them. So,
I think I might have another fact.
Please.
Was he a week away from his 7th birthday?
Correct.
Yes. That's 7 days.
But just before we move on into that, it sits on the Appalachian Trail, Spence Field. When you get up to Spence Field and you hop on the AT, you can kind of go northeast up the Appalachian Trail, and you'll hit Rocky Top, your next peak, and then you'll also hit Thunderhead Mountain. So you have some peaks up there, and I've heard Dwight McCarter talk about the weather up there, and it's pretty true. There's kind of always a pretty regular wind coming out of North Carolina up there, so the weather can change. It's kind of open. There's not really any sort of like other mountains blocking anything coming over, from the other side. So the weather can change rapidly, and it does, and it will in the story that we're about to tell you about Dennis.
May I ask a question, like an actual question for me?
Absolutely.
How far away is Spence Field from Clingman's Dome, where we stayed? And is the wind the same? Because that night it was, pardon my French, it was rip-roaring.
Yeah, it could be just as bad, if not worse.
Okay.
Back in 1969, 51 years ago, when this took place, it was a lot more open up there. Right now, it's not as open as it once was. A lot of trees have grown up at Spence Field, so you don't really have that. Like a lot of the pictures that I've seen anyway, it's like it is a field. It is open.
Yeah.
And you have almost 360-degree views up there, into Tennessee and North Carolina. So that wind, like I said, there's nothing to stop it. So
You're just in it.
and you go up to like Rocky Top, which is maybe like a mile and a half north of Spence Field.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly open. It is 360-degree views. How far is it from Klingman's Dome?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say maybe about 13 to 15 miles south on the AT. I don't know if that's the crow flies, but up the trail, it's probably about 13 to 15 miles would be my guess.
All right. So fairly close to other disappearances.
Yes, fairly close.
Yes.
In between, and I think I can probably talk about this because it's in one of Dwight McCarter's journal entries. As they started sort of expanding their search further and further out from Spence Field, they go to Derrick Knob, which is about halfway between Klingman's Dome and Spence Field on the AT. And I believe there's a shelter there as well. There's shelters all along the AT in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, as well as other places in the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So what exactly? And I know what a bald is. You have a lot of trail experience. What exactly is a knob?
I don't really know.
Well, okay. I appreciate your honesty.
I wish I did.
Yeah. As I've heard it my whole life, but I don't know what a knob. Well, I know
it could just
what
be
a
that
knob
they've named
is,
it something that right.
Yeah.
It could just be that they've named it that.
Yeah.
So that it's not.
It's not a bald.
It's not the same as everything else that's
Right.
named.
Right.
Such and such. On Mount LeConte, you have the cliff tops, which it's not a bald. It's not a knob. I don't guess. Is it a geographical feature? I don't know.
Well,
are you going to Google that right now?
I think while you're talking, I'm going to Google what is a knob.
Do it.
And see what kind of filth comes up before I find the actual proper answer. Let's see. A rounded, usually isolated hill or mountain is a knob.
It seems like that would almost work for any sort of mountain or peak.
Yeah. Or a rounded protuberance. Protuberance.
And see, I've never been to Derrick Knob, so next time I try to attempt to go that far up the Appalachian Trail, then I will perhaps be on the lookout for this protrusion.
For a good-looking knob. Yeah.
This protrusion that they speak of there.
I like it.
But so, yeah, if you want to go ahead, we can get into the actual Dennis Martin case, if you'd like to.
I would love to.
All right, so just to give you some information on young Dennis, he was 6 years old at the time. He was born in 1962, and he disappeared June 14th, 1969 in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The search effort, go ahead and get some of this information out of the way, was the most extensive in the park's history. Ultimately, it involved more than 1,400 searchers, and it covered a 56 square mile area. That is a massive search.
Yeah.
Now, this 1,400 people wouldn't be there all at once, obviously, but they were looking at Dwight McCarter's book, Lost, a Ranger's Journal of Search and Rescue, on the order of probably 150 to 350 people a day looking for Dennis. And, of course, that changed after this disappearance. It wasn't so much about saturating the area with searchers. It was more about getting specialized groups of people in there that knew what they were looking for and not possibly, like we said, trampling on clues, footprints.
Evidence.
Yeah.
Right.
They were searching areas, researching areas. In his book, he talks about finding apples and oranges from other search crews that had just been through there. But even still, with that many people, You would think a 6-year-old kid just goes off into the woods.
Yeah.
There's no way that 350 people a day couldn't locate somebody.
Find
It's
something.
not the correct way to do it, I guess, now they know. But
Yeah.
even still, you've covered this area with people. They're literally just arm to arm going through the woods, you know?
Yeah. Dogs too.
Dogs, too.
Yeah. Just crazy.
By the time the search had officially ended in September, the searchers had logged almost 14,000 man-hours. And the helicopters that they had utilized had spent nearly 200 hours in the air. So this was a massive search. And, you know, it just went on and on. I think in his book he chronicles about 16 days in his book.
Dwight McCarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about that book. And in the notes and stuff today, we've actually pulled from a few sources. So I've pulled a lot of information from his book, as well as some various sources on the internet, and another one called Unsolved Disappearances in the Great Smoky Mountains by Juanita Baldwin and Esther Grubb. If you all want to locate that book on Amazon, you can find it there. Lots of good information, not only on Dennis's disappearance, but as well as Thelma Melton, Trini Gibson, and it talks about a few other cases as well.
Yeah.
So,
but then also Dennis Martin, he wasn't just like a first timer in the woods. He was for a youngster.
yeah.
He kind of knew what was going on up there.
Correct. Yeah. In fact, there's a quote from his mother, Violet Martin. She wrote to the newspapers throughout the Southeast, and she said, Dennis begs to go to the mountains on weekends. He is an experienced mountain hiker for a 6-year-old and is usually in front of the group picking up the trail, end quote. So he loved the outdoors.
Yeah.
And so, like you were saying earlier, this was a tradition, and Dennis was going to be sort of joining them on this camping trip for the first time. This was a Father's Day outing where they would kind of go up to Russell Field, which you hit first on kind of a loop there, and then they were going to make their way up to Spence Field.
They camped there one night and then
Correct.
went up.
Correct, yeah. So this was going to be like his introduction to the group. And in this group going up to Spence Field was going to be his 9-year-old brother, Doug. His father was an architect from Knoxville, Bill Martin, and his grandfather, Clyde Martin. The group spent the night in Russell Field, like we said.
Okay.
With Dr. Carter Martin of Huntsville, Alabama, and his 2 sons. And I want to think
go ahead.
That was another family that also just happened to have the same last name, Martin. And I think David Paulides has actually talked about that in his interviews as well, that was another family, not related to them, that they just happened to meet along the way.
And they like grouped up
with their kids and stuff, were hanging out. So they were all having fun.
So it's a very sizable group.
A big group that started searching immediately when Dennis went off into the woods by himself.
Right.
Which will explain how that all came about shortly.
So it would make it, I don't want to jump ahead too far, but one of the theories is kidnapping of sorts.
Correct.
Make it very difficult for just some dude to come kidnap a kid out of that whole group.
Right.
To me, that seems very unlikely.
Right. So just very quickly to go into the specifics of how he actually disappeared. The kids were all playing, and they were going to sort of jump out of the woods and scare the adults, right?
Right.
So they're all playing, but the adults see what they're doing. His father, his grandfather, they know what they're doing. A small group of the boys, not including Dennis, they go in one direction, and Dennis kind of goes in another.
But his dad saw him, right? Didn't his father say that
they were not far away?
Am I jumping ahead? I'm sorry.
No. They were not far away. And so the other kids, jump out, do their thing, like they're scaring the adults, whatever.
Yeah.
And Dennis doesn't come out of the woods. And I've read different times on this, but they've never been over 10 minutes. Some sites have said 10 minutes, some say 5. I think his father said he was out of my sight for no more than 5 minutes. And you have to think, and I've read this in a couple places too, that Dennis had a learning disability to some degree. I don't know what that means. So you think if your 6-year-old child had some sort of learning disability or was impaired in some way, you're really going to be more cautious about not letting him out of your sight. So far away from anything up there on top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere. So I would not think that he would not have been out of his sight for 10 minutes. That's a long time to let your 6-year-old son just go off into the woods.
Yeah.
I've seen 5 minutes. I think probably no more than 5 minutes, right?
That would make sense, especially considering how the father reacted.
Correct.
Afterward. Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
It's devastating.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he would have been more than 5 minutes out of his sight, anybody's sight. And you get a large group of people there. So Dennis goes in the woods, and he doesn't come out. And as far as what happens next, his father takes off down the trails looking for his son. They go into the woods, start looking for him. Everybody starts spreading out, and they find nothing. There's no footprints. There's no clothes. They don't hear a scream. There's no blood. There's no tear of a clothing, shirt, shorts. He was lightly dressed in little shorts and little T-shirts, and, they found nothing.
From my research, green shorts and a red shirt.
I believe so.
All right. You're welcome.
Thank you. We deal in specifics here at the Terribly Vexed Podcast.
Yes, for sure. Nothing. We spare no expense.
So, yeah, everybody, including the family that they met up with that also had the last name of Martin, they all spread out and they all start looking for him. I think it was his grandfather that eventually made his way down to Cades Cove and found a ranger to join them and tell him that he's been missing. And like David Politis has talked about, the weather turned. It was the summertime, so it was hot, and the storms kind of start rolling in after it's running for a hot spell or whatever there, and I think it starts storming around 8 or 9 p.m. that night, and a lot of rain fell, 2 to 3 inches, from what I've read on various websites and in Dwight's book.
Which obviously can't help the search.
Correct.
Yes.
Because that's going to
that
automatically
much more difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tracking dogs, it's over. They can't, they're not going to be able to find anything. They're not going to be able to get a scent.
Mm-hmm. But they did, from what I see here, they did find some footprints. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Child-sized
but I
footprints.
I think those were dismissed as being Martin's because from the notes, I think there was a Boy Scout troop that was participating in the search. See, that's weird too, because back in the day, you literally they brought everybody in that wanted to volunteer. So there's a Boy Scout troop. Bad idea.
Which that's just, even back then, you would just think as like the leader of the search, you'd be like, nah, that's probably not a good idea.
We're looking for a little kid. We've got a bunch of kids looking for a kid.
Just seems bad.
Yeah.
But
it
was the 60s.
Yeah. It's probably not the best idea in the world, so.
But it was weird that it was a shoe that led just to a stream. But then did any Boy Scouts, were one of them missing a shoe? Did they ask them that?
I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't go any further into any of that information. He was wearing an Oxford-type shoe, which was the shoe that,
Dennis was wearing?
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I guess that ultimately, turned into nothing.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
we're in some dead spots here.
You can cut this part out.
You won't, though, will you?
No, I will.
You will not cut this part out.
Maybe not. I kind of like these moments, but if you want me to cut it out, I'll cut it out. Hey, we're still learning.
We're still learning
Yeah,
here.
we're getting our feet wet.
Relax.
Yeah.
We're going rolling here.
Yeah, I think we're doing a good job.
Going back to Dennis Martin, just from Dwight McCarter's book, I pulled a few excerpts from his daily journal. So he chronicled 16 days, I believe, in his book, Lost. It's talking about 300 searchers. Basically the search consisted of them being taken up the Boat Mountain Trail by Jeep. They'd be taken up by helicopter daily if the fog permitted, because the weather just essentially turned bad the whole time they were up there, right? So they're dealing with lots of rain, lots of fog, lots of wind, and you can't fly, I guess, in those types of conditions.
Yeah, I think even if you could, can't see anything.
Also like transporting guys up to Spence Field from Cades Cove.
Oh, I got you. I see.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that hampers the search because you're having to bring back people that are really tired, exhausted, and bring new, fresh people up, that have, that are ready to go or whatever. But it was, so I'm looking at the notes here, transported 65 more searchers and supplies to Spence Field, 365 searchers on Tuesday, June 17th, 1969. And those types of numbers, you see, they just kind of keep going day after day. And that's a lot of people to have found really nothing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that seems very unlikely.
Yeah, they're searching all the drainages. They're going over, ground that other searchers has already gone over. It just seems highly unlikely that they wouldn't be able to find anything at all ever in the time that this was going on. So from the journal on the fourth day, July 17th also, various shoe prints were found, some thought to be Dennis, others not. They found a boy in Cades Cove, but it wasn't Dennis. He just happened to be wearing similar clothes to Dennis. So they had their hopes up and also, quickly let down. It's also interesting to note, which David Paulides has talked about, the Special Forces, the Green Berets, which we were talking about before we started the show here. I don't know if that was such an odd thing that the Green Berets were utilized in the search for Dennis. I think they were in the area doing...
Just happened to be there.
Training, right. On this fourth day of the search, in his book, he says 40 special forces, 50 junior college students, 75 National Park personnel, and 20 different rescue squads. And who knows how many people could have been involved in each one of those rescue squads.
Man.
So that gets you up to 300 or 400 people.
Yeah. And that's per day.
Every day for weeks. And, the search was officially canceled in September. And I guess they would just sort of go up with trackers like Dwight. Yeah. Which, by the way, I also noticed this in his book as well. It's just another little piece of information. The three main trackers were J.R. Buchanan, Art Whitehead, and his brother Grady Whitehead. Dwight was only 24 at the time of Dennis's disappearance. And in his words, quote, "In no way do I possess the man-tracking skills that Buchanan and the Whiteheads have, but I have been lucky enough to have accompanied them on different searches in the past," end quote. So at the time, Dwight had not yet become the legend man-tracker that he would
At that point.
Later in life, yeah. There was some other guys that were already really, really good, had been doing it for a long time. And that just brings up another point that's so odd that a 6-year-old kid can go into the woods probably no more than 50 feet away for just a few minutes. First off, not be found by your father, your family, friends that are all standing there, but then disappear so much so that a professional tracker cannot locate you. Something really strange has happened.
Yeah.
If a guy like Dwight McCarter or the guys that trained him can't find you, that is very strange. There's no way around it. That's odd. If they can't find any sign of what happened to you, that's very, very strange.
Yeah, and like you were saying, like even like something small as like a broken twig, something like nothing.
Yeah, like when you
Go ahead.
join Dwight on one of his guided hikes, for example, he'll tell you and show you the smallest little details about everything. So when he was called upon to go looking for somebody, he's turned it on, okay? He will notice every small detail if something is not right. I just remember walking with him, and he's talking to all of us, and he's noticing a small flower that's blooming, and it shouldn't be blooming yet, and it tells him something. No detail goes unnoticed with somebody like that when you get into that business,
Right. They're hyper aware.
Hyper aware.
Yeah.
Every little rock, every flower, every bush, every shrub, every tree. He said, Josh, if you're lost in the woods, you could eat the bark of that tree. It's got everything you need. I was like, what? Some sort of a beach, I think, or something.
Oh, speaking of eating stuff on the trails, did I bring this up last time? Remember that
I don't know.
that full body itch to the bone rash that I had
Right.
a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, okay, I remember, yeah.
Did I tell you this already?
No.
Remember when I was trying to be cool and was like, oh, check out this blackberry, and I ate it?
Oh, yeah.
My boss told me, who is an outdoorsman, and like I said, he said there's no way that was a blackberry this time of year. So I was trying to be a Dwight and like be cool, but I gave myself a rash.
We need to give the listeners here a little backstory on this.
On what?
On why you were eating this and where this happened and what was the circumstances. Did we actually talk about this on the show?
Yeah, I think so. I know we discussed it. I think it was maybe in the introductory episode.
It was very briefly, though.
Oh, in the last episode, we talked about Susan Clements because we were up there.
And you mentioned that then. I've already forgotten.
I don't know. I might not have. I don't know. I just thought it was a funny story.
We go out to Andrews Bald.
The point is, I'm not
and
a
this
Dwight.
Guy grabs the first thing he sees and starts munching off of a bush, assuming that it's a blackberry.
My sleeve got caught on a thorn, and I looked over, and it looked like a blackberry, and I've seen blackberries. I swear to God it was a blackberry, and I wanted to look cool, like I knew what I was doing. And I said, hey, Josh, check out this blackberry, and I popped it in. And a couple days later, full body rash. Had to go to the ER to get shot in the ass. Yeah. So that's the culprit, I think. So
I have never picked anything off of anything when I've gone into the woods because I don't know what anything is out there.
Well,
it would be great to learn. I know Mr. McCarter knows everything.
Yeah.
But I know nothing about that. So what I eat is what I take with me.
And here's the thing. I don't really either. So I just, like I said, I was just trying to impress you. I was wanting to impress you.
But you nonetheless.
Yeah.
Hey, watch this. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Pop.
Oh, check this out. Blackberry, fresh. Smoky Mountain blackberry.
He knows exactly what it is, too.
Yeah.
He knows the name in Latin.
I wish I could make something of. I was trying to think of something clever. But yeah. Nothing. Smokus blackberries.
No
That's
good.
the best I could come up with.
No good.
Nope.
So, yeah.
So the point is, make sure you're with a guy like Dwight if you're going to eat something in the woods.
Yeah, and I would recommend going on one of his guided hikes. You will learn so much in the few hours that you get to spend with him. So anyway, back to the Dennis Martin disappearance.
Yes.
And the massive search that took place. So going back to his journal briefly here, on the 5th day, June 18th, Yes, June 18th.
Come on, man.
I don't know why I put that in there like that. Stupid me. I think it was not a correct issue. I think it did it for me. Sometimes it does that, Don't know what you want.
Yeah.
And I didn't check it out. This is from Dwight's journal. Quote, on this day, we grid the Hog Gap area on the Jenkins Ridge Trail in North Carolina. I especially like the Blockhouse Mountain area and the D'Armand Bald, which are on the other side of Haw Gap. There is evidence of old camps at Haw Gap. At Haw Gap. At Blockhouse Mountain, there is a huge meadow. On top of the lone mountain, there seems to be an ancient presence on this mountain, perhaps from early Cherokee or even earlier Indians who left their intricate carvings not far from here. And actually, on one of his guided hikes, he talked to me about some carvings that he found, I think he said in Fontana Lake. He didn't tell me where. And the lake has to be low, like they have to have dropped the lake for the winter for you to be able to see those carvings. And he didn't really know what they were. He told me about them, like I said, on that last hike. And he had some guys, I think, that were going to do something on that, a documentary or something, and also utilize his knowledge of the area. And so, but anyway, they had stationed some people at Shookstack Fire Tower and the High Rock Tower, which I don't think they actually got rid of until the early 80s. And they were looking for buzzard activity. That's another way they can look for any possible, decaying organic matter.
Yes.
They'll use buzzards and lookouts.
I didn't even think about that.
I
would never have thought of that.
Yeah, when I first read that, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
That's brilliant.
And they actually found a bobcat that way. They saw some buzzard activity, followed it off into the mountains there, into the woods, and they found a bobcat that had just died. So,
I guess it works. I mean, that's it.
After a few days of the search, they start getting, calls from clairvoyants and psychics. Yeah.
Here we go.
Once this makes the news, you start getting those calls from the psychics, and they start trying to help out. Of course,
for a fee though, or are they just doing it like for out of the kindness of their hearts?
Yeah. No, I'm not really sure as to what their motivation could have possibly been. They offer lots of predictions. They're very vague. And from his journal entries, the searchers attempted to follow what the information that they provided. But again, it was so vague, they couldn't really follow it. Yeah. He's next to a tree, down a hill, right. Behind a rock.
Yep.
It's literally that vague.
I feel like he's laying on soil. Something like that.
Right.
They're looking off just...
He's very close. He's within a 5-mile radius of where he went missing.
Yeah.
And you'll find him cold and shivering next to a rock. So they attempted to follow some of the clairvoyants, the psychics, predictions, and they found nothing. There were many of them, by the way. He talks about that several days, the daily journal entries in his book, that they would call all the time, and
Did any of them ever show up? There's any stories about that? Did they think they were just like there, but they had their own little section of search? So they're all just doing their special waters and whatever the hell they're doing.
Who knows?
And they're just like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Nothing came of the fortune tellers being able to help out in the search, unfortunately. I don't know that that's ever actually helped in any search for anybody.
Well, maybe that could be a future show. Maybe it has happened, and we just don't know, but we're making fun of them for no reason.
That's right.
Yeah.
We
apologize to any clairvoyants.
But
you should have seen this coming, to be fair. So
I'm sorry. We apologize. But Justin's right. You should have seen this coming.
Yeah. Also, weren't the... Oh, go ahead. I might be jumping ahead.
No. I just want to say that we approach a lot of these things with a skeptical mind.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, they're strange.
For sure.
His disappearance is very, very odd. And it hasn't been explained.
Yeah.
Ever in 51 years that he's been gone. It's not been explained by anybody.
Nothing. Not a trace.
Other than what I've seen and heard from Dwight in interviews and talked to him where he thought a wild man took him.
Yes. That's what I was just going to bring up.
Yeah. Is
You go
that
ahead,
really
then.
what you were just about to say?
I was about to say if I'm jumping ahead, I'm sorry, but the ginseng guy, was it Harold?
No, that was just a family that was visiting the park.
Okay.
You're talking about Harold Keyes.
Yes.
So we'll jump ahead just a little bit here
Sorry.
and talk about a sighting by the family Keyes.
And what year was that? I have it written down here somewhere. But
Right. No, this was within a few hours of Dennis disappearing.
oh, really?
Really.
I thought it was
This was Harold Key. He was 45 of Carthage, Tennessee. From what I've read in various places, they were asking a ranger in Cades Cove, in the Cades Cove area, where they could see some bear activity or, I guess, deer, wildlife in general. And a ranger directed them to the Rowan's Creek area in the Sea Branch, I guess you would call it a drainage or creek area of Cades Cove.
around here. It's called a crick.
A creek.
Yeah.
In a creek. So they make their way to this area. I don't know if this was on a trail or if this was off trail, that they just sort of followed the creek back into a holler. But
yonder holler.
Yonder holler. And so they get down there, and I think it was his son first that...
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Okay, we're back, and I want to apologize. I was moving the computer, and my thumb hit the wrong button, and Josh was in the middle of a story about Harold Key. And but now we're back. Everything's okay.
Good. Everything's great.
Yeah, we're re-energized. We took a little break.
Piece of pizza.
Yeah,
Another beer.
beer,
Thank you.
a tinkle,
Quick tinkle.
and then
Outside, too.
and now we're here. So let's get back to old Harold Key.
Harold Keyes. I guess
Keys.
it's just Key.
Key. Okay.
Key. Harold Key. From Carthage, Tennessee. I don't know exactly where I just left off. I think I just told you that they had talked to a ranger and headed up to Rowan's Creek, which is
Yes.
just off Cades Cove.
Mm-hmm.
They were looking for some wildlife, bear, deer, what have you. And they get up there and hear a, quote, enormous, sickening scream, according to Harold. And his son spots a unkempt man up on the mountainside with what appears to be something on his shoulder. Now, this took place a few hours after Dennis disappeared, which was at about 4:30 in the afternoon.
And wasn't that like you might have it there 5 miles or so away from Spence Field?
I'm not exactly sure, but it's not too terribly far. Probably 4 to 5 miles.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, that's what I read at some point.
Yeah, Harold says he thought it might have been a moonshiner off in the woods there. And he didn't report this to the Park Service until a few days later, because at the time he was not aware that a boy had gone missing up at Spence Field.
Yeah.
So he says that he didn't recall the exact moment or time that the incident occurred. But later, I guess it was discovered that it was probably a few hours after Dennis disappeared. So I guess their initial thought was that a man carrying a 6-year-old boy, if that's what it was, could have made that distance in the few hours.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, the FBI didn't think that when they were later brought in to go over witness testimonies of things that they saw in places like this, They didn't think it was actually possible that somebody could have made the distance from Spence Field down to this Rowan's Creek area.
But a wild man is used to that kind of terrain.
Right.
And a 7-year-old isn't
Exactly.
that hefty of a load.
Yeah, especially if he's like killing wild animals and
Yeah.
throwing them over his shoulder.
Uh-huh.
And he's used to that terrain.
Yeah. Probably has his
So-
own, like, secret pathways that, he knows
It's not on the regular trails.
Yeah.
This is kind of interesting, too. Just kind of going along, more talking about that. Harold Key said that he saw a white car parked near his, and when he returned to his car, when the family got back to the car after they had heard the enormous, sickening scream and finished their visit up there in Rowan's Creek, the car was gone. The white car was gone. But, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. That could have been anybody.
It's just...
If I'm not mistaken, they were parked in the picnic area as well, which is,
yeah.
again, one of the trails you can take is in the back of the picnic area in Cades Cove, which is right next to the campground and the riding stables.
So a crowded area where cars just park.
Very much so.
So that's really no lead.
No.
Yeah.
But it was mentioned in several things.
Yeah. Which I guess, I would have mentioned that to the police if,
Yeah.
well, possible.
Yeah, there's a white van right next to my,
Mm-hmm.
rusty, creepy-looking van.
A chomo,
Something.
if you will. Chomo van.
So that was the Harold Key incident. And if I'm not mistaken, also Dwight had hoped that the FBI would pursue that lead further. They didn't. And again, because they didn't think that somebody could make that distance from Spence Field down there. But he ultimately, I believe, hiked that and did make it in like an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have been done.
I was actually listening to a Coast to Coast with, here we go again, George
Politis?
Why can't I not remember that? Anyways.
It's just one of those names that's...
Yeah. Politis. And I mentioned this to you earlier. He was talking about Dwight and interviewing Dwight about this and that whole thing. And Dwight even mentioned, like, why are you guys not going up there? Like, I could do this in an hour. Why are you not trying? Which kind of leads into the whole conspiracy side of the missing 411.
Correct, yeah. Like,
Which,
I guess you're kind of talking about like the Green Berets. You're
yeah.
kind of wondering why they didn't. It's my understanding anyway that they did not really, I want to say, cooperate,
They didn't-
communicate, work with the Park Service during the search.
Yeah.
They were in the area training, from what I've read, and then they were, of course, utilized during the search, but that they did not communicate with the Park Service. They kind of wanted to be left on their own. Like the first time I took a guided hike with Dwight, he said they wanted to be left on their own and do their own thing. Now, that could have just been bravado. Hey,
Right,
we're
for
Green
sure.
Berets. We don't need your help.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can attribute anything odd to that. I don't know if it was sort of suggested that they were brought in because something really strange was going on.
Something fishy.
Something weird.
But
I mean,
you'd think like the Green Berets would put in the extra effort and like really just to,
special forces,
because
man.
they're special forces. Yeah.
Right.
I think I would. If I made it to Green Beret, I'd be like, I'm going to find this fucking kid. I'm going to show them.
But they didn't.
No.
And so, yeah, it's, I don't know how strange that is. But again, the conspiracy being, like you said, why didn't the FBI pursue that lead? Could there have been other leads that they didn't pursue that were,
Yeah.
And, of course, Dwight's whole theory that he was taken by a wild man. Because, okay, so the Great Smoky Mountains National Park became a park in 1934, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is 1969. It's been a park for about 30 years. There are vast open areas up there where there are no trails. Vast, rugged areas.
Yeah.
30 years after this has been a park, there was a lot of contention in certain areas where they were taking people's land.
Yep.
It's quite possible there were people still living up there in the back country. You can go up there, even though they say there's about 900,000 miles of trails in the Smokies alone, lots of areas where there's nothing. In fact, there's planes that have disappeared in the Smokies. In the Appalachia, they still haven't found.
Gone.
Places where people have probably never set foot. It's incredibly thick vegetation, trees, laurel, rhododendron.
Do you think it's possible? This just as a theory, perhaps Dennis Martin was taken by one such wild man, and he just lived with him. Like, he just grew up as a wild man himself.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, because he wouldn't know how to get out of there. And
So
then once he gets pally with him,
right,
he's only 7.
you don't know what the dude's like. I don't know what the dude's motives were for nabbing him in the first place.
I know.
I mean, he
But-
could have very well been watching them for a while.
Yeah.
If they were up there for a couple of days, like they're at a night, overnight at Russell Field, and then they're up there at Spence Field. I don't know if it's a day or two before he disappears. They're not up there long, though, I don't think. Guy could have been watching him the whole time.
Yep. It's from the vegetation.
And I think
Hidden.
also from Harold Key, his account of what he saw, the guy was unkempt. He was wearing, I don't know if it would have been like a pelt or like some sort of like animal hide or
Yeah.
something, but he looked pretty rough. He had a beard, scraggly hair kind of a thing. I don't know.
Perhaps Sasquatch.
Well, that's another theory that people have. Did he
Yes.
actually see a man,
Yeah, it's a crazy story. And the whole missing 411 phenomena is
Right.
crazy.
The changing of the weather after the
Yeah.
person goes missing, which in the Thelma Pauline Melton case, I don't think that happened there, though, but it certainly did in the Trini Gibson case.
Mm-hmm.
The weather had been poor when Susan Clements disappeared that whole week, and it just sort of continually got worse, I think. Constantly raining,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very, very strange, So there's lots of room for conjecture.
Yes. And you know mine. Aliens.
Right.
Abductions. Because I'm like Fox Mulder. I want to believe that it's there, but I am very
understand.
skeptical. But yeah, if I see some solid evidence, I'm going to believe it immediately. So yeah, so 51 years later, not a trace, no real valid theory, right? I know his father thinks he was abducted.
Yeah.
Not by an alien, but a
A
person.
person. He
Yeah.
thinks they were being, followed by somebody and nabbed
Yeah.
him when because if you want to think that it may have been a wild boar, a bear, a mountain lion, it wouldn't have grabbed his mouth. A human would have known to grabbed his mouth and,
Keep him quiet.
kept him quiet, right?
Yeah.
But, I don't know if
Not that I know how to do that or anything. but,
and
yeah.
the proper method for It's weird though because his dad would have immediately went to the area where he just saw him run in the woods.
Yeah.
And he couldn't have gone that far.
And
And
not-
even if a guy was a wild man living in the woods, could he have gotten so far away from a whole bunch of people searching? You know what I mean?
And that's a ballsy move to take a kid from that large of a group,
Yeah, so
knowing that something was going. Because if you're watching him, you'd know something's going on. Like,
he wouldn't have just not been paying attention to what his 6-year-old son is doing.
yeah, especially if he had.
You're out in the wilds.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
And so when we hiked out to Andrews Bald, there were open areas
Mm-hmm.
and then the tree line off in the distance.
Mhm.
And so we can imagine that was basically just like that up there.
Yeah.
not that far away. You immediately go right to where he disappeared, and nothing. It just seems
Just vanished.
Yeah, nothing. Highly unlikely that who knows that it could have even been a person. What are we dealing with in these disappearances?
We just don't know.
I don't know.
And that I think is why we are terribly vexed.
Right. I saw that coming a mile away.
Yep.
But kind of going back to Dwight's book here in one of his journal entries on the 6th day of the search. This was Friday, June 20th. Says they were beset by thunderstorms. Again, the weather just stayed horrible the whole time. More jeeps and helicopters arrive, but they couldn't be utilized. And he says records show there were 780 searchers up there at Spence Field. Search was suspended at dusk. 6 days, 12.5 square miles had been searched. Nothing.
Other than that shoe, but that's right. Is that the only piece of possible evidence? Was that shoe?
I don't know if that was the shoe or a shoe print. Was that a shoe?
It was an Oxford shoe.
Was it an Oxford
and a
shoe?
sock. And a sock, from what I read, was found.
And supposedly that's what he lost, and from what he was wearing, would have lost because he was wearing Oxford shoes, an Oxford type shoe.
Yeah, but then the Boy Scouts were there,
right?
So it's not 100%. But then did it again? Was any little Boy Scout missing a shoe?
I don't know.
Why did they not ask?
Wasn't followed up? I guess.
Yeah.
There's no answer to that one.
Those are the only two possible pieces of evidence, right? This is a shoe and a sock. And that's it. Am I wrong?
As far as I know, that's it.
Okay. And 50.
There was no blood, no clothing, no articles of clothing, nothing. And so, but a weird thing happens, and he talks about this in his book. And when you're searching for people, sometimes they'll hide from the search and rescue guys when they get near to them, or when they're searching for them, because they call them out. They're yelling out their name. For whatever reason, especially the longer you spend in the woods by yourself if you're lost.
Is that paranoia or hypothermia?
It could be a combination of the two, I guess.
A little bit of both.
You revert to like a primal sort of like fight or flight.
Yeah.
Real, you have to imagine if you spent several days in the woods, this wouldn't account for him going missing immediately. He wouldn't be hiding so much so that,
Yeah.
he would be terrified of whoever he thinks coming after him. But in Dwight's book, he talks about approaching somebody and they're running away from the searchers. They ran away from him. So it's like when you get like hypothermia, paradoxical undressing. Mm-hmm. You start to feel hot when you're actually getting much, much colder, and you're getting closer to death. You actually start taking off your clothes and dropping gear. Dwight talks about that in his book. People will start shedding all of their gear, gloves, backpack. They'll take out. He'll basically follow that in some cases. He talks about following all of the items that they drop.
Just a trail of gear and clothes.
A trail of gear and clothes, tents, things that would keep you alive.
Mm-hmm.
And people start dropping all of that stuff.
What's that called again?
Paradoxical undressing. And I actually think I saw that one time. I was hiking to Mount LeConte via the Boulevard Trail, and I passed a guy and his daughter, and he had taken off his jacket, and it was snowing, and I'm talking like probably a good 12 inches of snow. It was very cold. I had on full gear, micro spikes, the whole works, and I passed this guy and his daughter, and he's taking off his shirt, and he's going,
God.
Yeah, he's taking off his shirt, and he's holding all of his stuff in his hand. But his daughter was with him, so I don't know. He was a husky sort of fellow, but
that's probably why it's like me. It'd be like me hiking in the dead of winter. I'd just be like, God,
so hot.
Yeah,
it was probably like 20 degrees that day, with wind ripping through the trees every once in a while when it would kind of open up on the trail out there.
He's probably loving that when that wind came through.
It could have been normal, or it could have very well been me seeing with my own eyes this phenomenon of people taking off their clothes, which is it's a weird thing, but people do it, and it happens all the time.
Yeah. Did you say anything to him?
I talked to him briefly, but I didn't say anything about,
I mean, but he seemed okay. Like,
if he were by himself, I would have stayed with the dude. But he was with what appeared to be his daughter.
yeah.
And she looked to be in her 20s, mid to late 20s, I guess.
All
So
right,
I assumed.
she could handle it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I never heard anything.
I went hiking to what's it, Abrams Falls? Tiny little baby hike.
Little baby hike.
Yeah, I went there and I made it, and I was like so out of breath, I'm on the way back. There's that one big hill,
I know.
Yeah, we were coming down.
Right.
And there's this little kid just running, sprinting up that hill. And an old, I'm assuming he's his grandfather, with like a walking stick. And he's just, are we almost there? And I'm like, yeah. But he wasn't. I might have killed that guy for all I know. But I felt bad for him.
Yeah.
Because I know the pain. But yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the search just continues to get larger and larger with people. You're nearing 1,000 at this point, just a few days in, and nothing is found. So each day they're shuttling people up and shuttling people down, and the search is spreading out and getting further and further away. Earlier I'd mentioned Derrick Knob, which is about halfway between Clingman's Dome and Spence Field.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just sort of an interesting excerpt from his book as he's talking about this. There was a settlement at Derrick Knob known as New World, and it dated back to the Civil War. This is kind of where several families had moved to escape the war. They kind of stayed up there away from everything that was going on. So they kind of lived in peace up there. And you're talking a place sort of like an elevation about 5,000 feet, sort of going between 5,000 and 6,000 feet, and very hard to get to at this time. It's not exactly easy to get up there now.
Yeah.
But you have to imagine back in the 1860s, this would have been very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
But they stayed up there in this area between what is now Clingman's Dome and Spence Field. And I thought that was just kind of an interesting side note there in his book. Talking about all of, it's all the history that's in those mountains up there,
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very old.
Yeah.
And they have a long history.
Yes, they do. And that family, did they ever go down and interact with during the Civil War or anything? Or was their whole life
I
up
don't know.
there just separated?
That's pretty much all it says. I'm
Yeah.
assuming they would have to come down to purchase food items, possibly trade. I don't know that you could live up there in such a remote area and completely live off the land and survive like that.
I could. No, I'd be dead.
There's another, just as a sort of jump off track here a little bit, there's another place in the Unicoi Mountains, which are just south of the Smokies, and you can hike to a place called Bob Strattonbald. And there was a family that used to live out there in roughly the same time period, the 1850s. And it's amazing. They just completely lived off the land. You have to put it in the time frame of the 1850s, too. There's nothing out there. There's no way. You just wonder. We're talking horses and, carriages and,
Would you like that rather than what we're doing right now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. Last time with the Cades Cove.
I'd give it all up in a heartbeat to live like that.
Yeah, I was up there, and this guy, we were in one of those cabins up there, which, whatever. But he's like, can you believe what it used to be like? And I was just like, yeah, it must have been great. And he goes, you said it, brother.
Of course.
Yeah. Like you're just living off the land and
Living off the land.
that's all. That's your job. Is
Live
to
by the
just-
seasons,
Yep.
Plant your crops, you've got your cattle and
Yeah. That'd been so nice.
raise a big old family, and not have to worry about anything else.
Yeah. Be great.
Except,
Disease. And,
everything.
Yeah. except any type of medical issue.
Right.
Yeah.
When a toothache would probably
Yeah.
take your life.
Yeah.
So,
Other than that, though, be great.
yeah. And it's just, going back to the whole the journal entries, by the 14th day, Dwight notes, quote, "A great sense of failure and disappointment have overwhelmed him, but he believes that they've done the best job that they can with the knowledge and skills and abilities that they possess." So, I think ultimately in his book he talks about the 16 days of the search that that it was really in high gear. Search goes on until September of that year of 69. And again, they weren't able to find anything of Dennis. He says in 1985, he was contacted by a longtime ginsenger that he knew well. For those of you that don't know, gathering ginseng in the national parks is illegal. And this is why this person waited a few years before he actually told Dwight this. But he supposedly found a skull and some bones near an uprooted tree in the Big Hollow area near Tremont. But Dwight and I think he said about 30 searchers went into that area and found nothing. So, again, another dead end there.
It's a shame the guy waited so long to say anything.
Almost 20 years.
Yeah.
But he was afraid of getting arrested for
digging up a root.
He could have simply said that he was just hiking off trail and,
And just off topic yet again, how illegal is it for the whole ginseng thing? Maybe it was a little stronger back then, because I go into a certain gas station these days and there's signs on the door that said, "We buy ginseng," and
right.
So, I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah. I guess it must have been harsher back then for whatever reason. I don't even know why would that be.
Yeah, and I've seen people walking out with things, going to their cars with plants and stuff in the park.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always going to be those people, I guess.
It's a no-no. Some serious fines if you get caught.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little jail time.
Well, do the crime, you do the time,
Right. But, so yeah, that's basically the Dennis Martin disappearance. It goes on for months. They find nothing. And to this day, nothing has been uncovered.
It's a crazy story.
It is.
Well, do you want to go ahead and break the news now?
I think we can.
Yeah. We got that covered, right?
I think so.
Given our little break, we've gone a little long.
Right.
But do you want to you put the legwork in on this one. Do you want to announce?
A little bit of legwork.
Yeah.
I sent out a few emails. I asked a few questions. It looks like for episode number 3 of the Terribly Vexed Podcast, we are going to be interviewing Dwight McCarter, the man, the myth, the legend himself.
The searcher.
The man tracker.
Yes. How cool is that?
He has agreed to do an interview with us.
We're going to shoot for, a couple hours?
At least.
Yeah.
He has a lot of information to share. And obviously, since he was there at the Dennis Martin case, we're going to be talking about the Dennis Martin case with him, as well as some of the other strange cases listed in his book and others that he hasn't listed, because there's a lot of information. I mean, he's found hundreds of people, both alive and dead, and in the book, there's just a handful of missing people that went missing in the park. But, this was a guy that, he did it all. He was the go-to guy.
He was the man.
Yeah.
Still is.
So we're going to have that interview coming to you.
What if we don't say it's going to be episode 3 for sure, in case his schedule doesn't align with ours?
Good call.
It's going to be an episode soon. Very,
Yes.
very soon.
I'm hoping for the next episode.
Yes, that would be great. Then can we finally drop this missing 411 shit?
Sure.
What do you... I was just joking around. What were you counting?
1, 2, 3. Would this be the third, right? for him?
If it's the next episode, it's the
Yes.
third episode.
Okay.
That's how I'm counting it, because the introductory episode doesn't.
We're not counting the introductory as a real episode.
Yeah.
That was just our first.
That's
okay.
just
Fantastic.
just a little teaser.
I don't know why that caught me, and I couldn't figure it out.
I saw you your eyes rolled to the back. Your eyes rolled back.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure it out. I could not figure out which episode it was going to be, but it was like,
Yeah.
I was terribly vexed by which episode we were going to be interviewing, Mr. McCarter.
It'll be episode 3 or 4 will be the interview with Joy McCarter.
Correct.
Yes. So,
We're extremely excited about that,
and then
and we hope you are too.
also, next episode, if it's not Dwight, we're going to step in to the Zimbabwe, the aerial school encounter.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I'm going to school you a little bit.
Please do.
Yeah.
This is going to be your area of expertise.
And possibly maybe some other encounters along the way.
I'll see what I can dig up as well.
Yeah. Well, this has been episode 2.
Episode 2 of the Terribly Vexed Podcast.
Terribly Vexed Podcast. And we are on Instagram, Terribly Vexed Podcast. Just across the board. Gmail, Terribly Vexed Podcast at gmail.com. Twitter. I don't know. No, we're not on Twitter.
We're not on Twitter.
I don't know. I don't use it. I'll start one. Yes, we're on Twitter. Terribly Vexed Podcast
good,
across the way.
Good. Start one tonight.
Should we do a Facebook?
No.
Yeah.
It's a dead platform.
I agree. I agree.
It's dead.
I hate
We're moving
Facebook
on.
too. So
Facebook is dead.
yes. Okay. So Gmail, Instagram, Twitter, Terribly Vexed Podcast.
Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you very much. And we'll see you next time.
Darn tootin'.
Godspeed.